To some of you, you probably saw the title and thought, wow, you have seen 500 episodes of One Piece. That's awesome. What an achievement. You are so dedicated. And another half of you probably are saying only 500 episodes. Are you even in Wano yet? You're not even in Wano? Oh, f you. And f your mom. Basically, this video is going to be giving my thoughts and opinions on One Piece as a whole after watching 500 episodes. So hopefully if you're thinking about watching One Piece or dropped it and are thinking about picking it back up, you can see this video and get the perspective on someone who is about halfway through the series. And if you're a diehard One Piece watcher or reader and are already caught up, you can watch this and see how someone who's just now getting into the show sees everything versus how you do. With that out of the way, let's talk One Piece and let's see if watching 500 episodes at around 20 minutes each, being about over 160 hours, was worth it or not. Before we dive into this One Piece video, go and subscribe and like this. That'd be super dope. I got tons of anime content already on the channel and much more coming soon, so stay subscribed. Let's start first with the positives here. What are the good things about this series so far and how has it hit me being about halfway through it? I gotta say, honestly, just upfront, I absolutely love this show. I obviously can't speak to the current arcs in One Piece going on right now, but I can say so far, as of right now, being halfway through, it has lived up to the hype.
Oh, thank God for that.
Everything everyone says about One Piece is true. The show has so many good things going for it, and I want to touch on some of the main things that I enjoyed throughout my watch. First off, the characters One Piece rivals some of the best animes out there. My favorite and first anime was Naruto, and I love that show because of all the cool characters and abilities and different storylines. And I have to say, One Piece is easily on that same level, if not more. The biggest thing I feel with One Piece so far is that everything with our characters feels thought out almost entirely. We see Blackbeard very early on in the series, and he's shown saying certain things that won't even be relevant for another like 200 episodes. There's so much foreshadowing done here that it just feels like Oda for sure thought about everything when making this series. Characters are shown, and then a few hundred episodes later, they might have a huge unexpected return or an in-depth backstory that you would have never even thought about. And like I said, I'm going to avoid spoilers here just in case anyone is looking to get into the series for the first time, just so that way they won't get spoiled. But that also means let's leave the comments as spoiler-free as possible too, please, and thank you. So for example, it's very obvious if you watch Naruto that the fourth Hokage being Naruto's dad was not always planned out, and stuff like Itachi being a double agent, almost triple agent or whatever, was something that they might not have fully thought about initially until later. And it's fine because Naruto's still a super enjoyable series, right? But so far in One Piece, everything has clicked. There's not been a single storyline or backstory that I felt was breaking canon or going back on anything that we've done already. On top of that, the characters are all just awesome. Even characters like Usopp, who I initially didn't like, I have since grown to love so much. This show has a way of bringing so many people in, but letting you take your time to like them and feel for them at your own pace, and not when the show tells you to like them, which I enjoyed a lot. That's what's so awesome, because if you had to pick a main character, it would obviously be Luffy, right? But it is kind of like the show Friends, where you kind of have Ross and Rachel, who you could maybe argue are the main characters, but it's kind of unfair to say Ross is more of a main character than someone like Chandler, right? Here you can say Luffy's the main character, but it feels a bit wrong because the whole team kind of feels like main characters. I think maybe it's because we follow Luffy more closely and independently, and his storyline gets most of the, screen time, but every single character does get their time to shine in different arcs and in different sections of the show. And there are some arcs and sections where Luffy takes a complete back seat and the whole team gets to shine. So that is just awesome, having a show that doesn't force us to follow one character. Instead, we follow the team, and then every other character feels like they're important. And what I also like is that they don't just give us a character, give us their backstory, and then move on. It seems like most of the time characters get constant additions to their backstory throughout the whole series. Like Robin, since her introduction in Alabasta, all the way to like Sapodi Archipelago and everything past that, has had continuous additions to her backstory that make her more and more important and more interesting. So again, like a character like Robin has had their backstory spread over basically 3 entire sagas that gets continuously updated and further developed. And someone like Nami, who has had people from her backstory from the first like 20 episodes start showing up again in episode 400 and stuff like that. The show just does a good job at giving each character a real feeling and making them honestly feel like a valuable member to the team. The plot for One Piece is also truly one of the best in anime. The fact that this story is so long might scare some people away at first, for sure, but honestly, after getting this far into it, I can truly say I understand why it's so long, and it's honestly so long because it needs to be. Oda is crafting not just a story or a series, but a world. The whole world is given attention in this show. Each saga, each arc builds off of the last. We revisit different locations, characters, and different storylines continuously throughout the show, but not in a cheesy fan service, remember this guy kind of way, kind of like how Star Wars does it, but because it genuinely matters and makes sense that these certain things would be happening. The show could definitely be condensed down a bit, but I think just because there's so many things that we need to pack in, it does kind of justify the length of the show. We get new environments constantly added, new islands, new powers, new abilities, in a way that honestly no anime really does. I think the series has such a tough job handling and managing the plot points from Luffy's backstory to Robin's backstory to Shanks to Whitebeard to even smaller characters like Buggy. It would be very, very easy for the show to trip up and misdeliver on certain storylines, but honestly so far it manages to give everyone and everything equal attention. One Piece also does a great job, like I mentioned before with Blackbeard. The foreshadowing is just insane in the show. I'm talking like hundreds of episodes of payoff for even the smallest things. The show truly doesn't forget a single thing. It will lay out mysteries like the Void Period super early on, and then slowly in between arcs build on it, and then eventually lead up to something, you know, in a different way really. The plot for One Piece is honestly one of the best parts, and I feel like it does so much so well that you might not even notice it after a certain point with how it connects so many things. But when you really think about it, there are very, very, very few anime, even just very few TV shows, period, that connect things and create such a massive world like One Piece. Now, I mentioned foreshadowing, so this topic is going to be a little bit harder to talk about without spoilers, so I'm going to keep this kind of brief, but this show has a way of showing you something small or minor in episode like 120, and then that thing coming back in a huge, massive way in episode 400. So much of this show is spent exploring and finding new things, and not a single piece of that goes to waste. A character will drop something saying I'm hunting a specific person, and then a few hundred episodes we get some huge, massive development on that. And it's not done in a super slow way or anything, it's done in a real world way that makes sense and honestly fits the world of One Piece perfectly. Again, I can't dive too deep into the foreshadowing here just for the sake of spoilers, but just know everything means something usually. Obviously, I've not fully finished the show, so I'm sure there are huge things coming for me also that I don't even expect yet. And that's the best part, is you're constantly moving and things are constantly being built whether you realize it or not. One Piece has great characters and great plot and awesome foreshadowing, sure. But man, the action is just awesome. Even early on when Luffy first meets Buggy, we get solid action from the jump. Most didn't have an ability set or something in the world that exists like, you know, Naruto or My Hero, quirks and chakra and all these things, right? But One Piece does a good job at bringing in these characters with insane devil fruit powers like Blackbeard, Whitebeard, and still having characters like Zoro and Sanji with no powers at all still feel like they actually matter. The show generally does a good job at spreading out power between characters. I mean, technically Luffy with his Gum Gum powers at first isn't even that strong, especially when you compare it to some of the other powers we see and meet later on, but I just love how the show still manages to have matchups with characters on completely different power levels. Sure, there are more powerful characters here and there, but it does a good job at making each character feel capable and also like they have no massive, you know, weak link really. I think at first it's very easy to look at characters like Nami and Usopp and consider them weak, and, you know, especially with how powerful the rest of the team is. However, they get power-ups and evolve their powers, you know, later on just like everyone else does, and they all end up kind of being generally pretty strong characters. Overall, the action in the series is great. It might not be the highlight, especially early on, but it is done very well. And honestly, a lot better than other older shows that are just as highly regarded, you know? Also, something interesting is that the action in this series is used mainly as a storytelling device. Very few times do we get action for the sake of action. Everything usually has a purpose. The action is almost always serving the story rather than being a thing of spectacle or fan service. Now, that's not to diminish the action that's in this show because they are amazing and they do go on for a long time. But I feel like almost always they mean something in the larger story or arc. They're getting to something. They're trying to move past something. It's very rarely just action for the sake of action. Now, I've basically spent a good portion of this video sucking off One Piece, and partially the reason for that is because I was very apprehensive on watching this show. For the longest time, I did not want to watch it, so now that I'm actually finally into it, I kind of just love embracing how good this show is. And I know there are people out there just like me in that regard that are kind of interested, but kind of scared to get into it. And I do want to persuade almost everyone I can to watch this show, but I'm also not a liar. I have to be honest and explain to you guys that while this show is really, really good, it is not perfect. So to be fair, I want to talk about some things I didn't like about One Piece, or rather some things I'm just not a huge fan of. Now, this one is very, very subjective. Don't let this take away from all the good things I said about this show. However, it is important to note that this show is not 100% perfect on every episode, on every arc.
You suck.
There are totally moments that drag and moments that overstay their welcome, like with anything. However, for some reason, the show's sluggish parts within One Piece, I just found to be very frustrating. I'm not sure if it's just me loving the story so much that I just want to get to more and more pieces and just get to bigger stories, or if it's genuinely just I hate the downtime and I hate, wasting time in the show. I think this is a bigger issue with some of the earlier sagas and arcs though, as I noticed it has gotten a lot better, especially after Thriller Bark, but it's still not perfect. I would say if you find a part of One Piece sluggish or hard to get through, take your time, do not burn out on the show at all. Take a break, watch something else, or just come back in a later, time. The world of One Piece is exciting, and it is important to not rush your journey with this show. Trust me, there's so many episodes, you're not going to miss out on anything because there's just so much content here. Also, suggestion here, so far I have skipped all filler besides G8 just based off of comments and advice I've gone on different videos, so thank you guys for that. I would honestly just urge everyone to do the same. Most of the filler is filler for a reason, so I would just avoid it, but still watch G8 because it's really good. I personally use animefillerlist.com, and I just go based off of that and avoid anything that it marks as filler. But like I said, I heard so many good things about G8, I made an exception, and it is great. I did really like it, so I think you should watch it, but again, it's totally up to you. Either skip filler arcs entirely or pick and choose like I did. I honestly don't think either would hurt your watch experience unless it is a really bad filler arc, but I think some filler arcs like G8 have the ability to enhance the story a bit more, so take that into consideration. So let's move on to the next kind of negative thing I gotta say here. Being how long One Piece is and how much story there is to tell, it is very understandable that some people might find the show overwhelming at times, especially when you consider the flip side to the good foreshadowing with the show. Sometimes it's easy to get so much stuff thrown at you or mentioned, you might have a tough time remembering everything. And I get that because I want to remember everything too, so if it does eventually ever come up, I want to know about anything. But in all honesty, my biggest suggestion would be just to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. It does a great job at re-explaining things multiple times, so if you find yourself confused, chances are there will be either a re-explanation at some point to whatever is being mentioned again, or show a flashback, which One Piece is very good at doing, at reminding viewers, especially if it's callbacks from super early episodes. And like I mentioned in the pacing section, there are times where the show slows down, and sometimes it does so on purpose to kind of give the audience some time to sit back with what just happened or to transition to a different arc. So this overwhelming feeling is not consistent at all. And in all honesty, there's nothing wrong with rewinding a scene or an episode to see what a certain character might have said, just in case you missed it. I will say do your best to avoid looking things up, not even because you might spoil yourself, that too, but also the internet tends to know when you look things up, and then you might get suggestions and whatnot on certain topics that could also be spoilers. So just, I would avoid looking anything up in general. So this is not going to be really a full negative, honestly. It actually is kind of a positive, but I just want to mention it because I know some people might care about this. I, for the longest time, thought the episode number was a huge negative for One Piece and for anyone that wanted to just get into the show. But now, after being over 500 episodes in, I will say the episode amount is honestly a huge positive for me and one of the best things about the show. Because once you start to like the show and become kind of a fan, I think it's this cool idea about being able to know that I can watch 50 episodes today if I really wanted to, and I still have so much more to watch. It is very unique to feel like my journey through One Piece feels like a real genuine journey, and I feel like I almost grow a little bit with the show as I watch it. Now, obviously, this is coming from a perspective of a fan of the show. When you have not seen the show, the 100 episode plus thing can definitely be really scary. And I will say, I think the show doesn't drastically change from episode 50 to 500. Sure, the animation and music might get a little bit better, but the core of the show and our characters remains honestly the same for a majority of the show. With that said, there is one arc in particular that I think everyone should get to, especially if you try One Piece and are not liking it. Please get to Arlong Park first. Before you drop the show, at least get to Arlong Park. I think the first few episodes are good in the show for sure, but I think one of the first arcs that we get, which is Syrup Village, is honestly really slow, and I don't think is a great representation for what One Piece truly is. So I would say before you think about dropping it, please get to Arlong Park. That is the first truly good arc in the show, and I think everyone should at least get to that point because I think that arc really drives home what One Piece is about and what it has to offer. If you make it to Arlong Park and you are still not feeling it, honestly, that's fine. Not everyone will love One Piece, and that's totally cool. Not everyone has good taste. But I promise after Arlong Park, you will have more respect for the show and its story and how it sets everything up. And I think from there, the show just moves on and gets better overall. Yes, moments of the show definitely do slow down, but it's still a great jumping off point for the show. The big question, is One Piece worth watching? easily 100 times over, yes. I think this anime sits among so many other iconic series and it has so far maintained its spot as one of the best animes of all time. I honestly think if you're an anime fan or trying to get into anime, you'd be doing yourself so dirty by not giving One Piece a try. And after watching over 500 episodes of the show, it holds its spot as one of my favorite animes so far. The main reason why I can't for sure say this is my favorite is honestly just because I haven't finished it yet. And for me, a big part of the show is going to be based off of the journey for sure. And this adventure of 1,000 episodes, was it worth it or not? The ending, I think, is really gonna kind of encapsulate how I fully feel about the show. So I can't make 100%, this is my favorite anime of all time right now, but I think I will be definitely making that statement probably once the show wraps up and I catch up in like 1,000 years. The journey has been great, but the conclusion of One Piece will definitely decide my overall feelings, but we will have to see when I finish the show. I love the show, and I think if you can make it through All Long Park and some of the small sluggish sections of the show, you will love it too. One Piece has a good way of bringing people in and completely changing their feelings. I went from really hating Usopp to now loving him and him being one of my favorite characters in the whole show. So I think the show might have the ability to change some of your guys' feelings too, especially if you've been pushing it off or avoiding the show, or even if you've been hating on the sidelines without even watching One Piece. I promise it is worth it. And as a former One Piece denier and avoider, I will definitely welcome any former One Piece haters to my side. Overall, are you a bad person for not watching One Piece? Yes, but that's not the point. I want everyone to feel like they can approach a series, no matter how big or how daunting, and still get everything they want out of it and more. I have a ton of One Piece Saga reviews talking about my watch through on this show. You can click those and click the card to see the playlist of all those videos. Check out my channel for more anime content. I really would appreciate it. I work a ton on these videos, so subscribing and liking and everything would be super dope. You can click right here to watch some video, and you can click right here to watch a different video. Thanks for watching to the end, and have a good one.